Very interesting to note that previous speaker now advocating for asset testing of super, which is actually what they do in Australia. So when they get up and speak about the Australian superannuation scheme, the other end of that sentence should be an asset testing for the recipients. It's fair enough debate to have, but you've got to use the full sentence in context to use it correctly, rather than just see these blank numbers of 2%, Kiwisaver 9% over there. Asset testing for super is on the agenda for the Labor Party, unless another member wants to deny that. Along the lines of capital gains tax at the next election for the Labor Party is on the agenda, unless another member wants to deny that. They'll also have to withdraw some of the videos that are out there from his various spokesmen and their various press releases. What else is on the agenda? Oh yes, a land tax is on the agenda for the Labor Party at the next election. But what's not on the agenda for the Labor Party at the next election apparently is axing the tax. They're voting for this bill, send a bus around the country opposing the change, the tax switch on GST, and paid for by the taxpayer, yes, but actually they're not going to reverse it. But they're up there talking and they're voting for this bill. So come on, focus a wee bit on the other side. Let's get on with the things that matter, because they are not actually axing the taxes. Well, at least that's the latest version, so who knows. In fact, also they talk about themselves economic literacy. Well, there's no better example of the need for national standards numeracy literacy than a pamphlet they've actually put out about GST recently, and they called it National's 15% GST. Somewhat misleadingly, conveniently, and somewhat alleged dishonestly, are we allowed to say that? It's telling the public, well, actually ignoring the fact that GST went from 0 to 10 under the Labor regime, went from 10 to 12.5 in 89 with 8 weeks' notice and preparation under the previous regime without any compensation whatsoever, in total contrast to actually what we have coming here on the 1st of October, which is a change in GST from 12.5 to 15 and a huge reduction, the most biggest changes in income tax and other taxations in 25 years. In fact, a $3.5–4 billion boost to our economy over the year, coming on October the 1st. So again, when members on the other side talk about GST changing and all the damage it may occur, actually finish the sentence accompanied with a switch from income tax to consumption tax. And again, it always surprises me that the Green Party are voting against an increase in consumption tax when you line it up with all that other rhetoric, Mr Speaker. And also, and we'll come to the bill in one moment because there's some interesting clauses right here, but why are people struggling over so many years under a Labor government? Yes, there's a recession going on. Hopefully we've bottomed out. Hopefully we're coming out of it. But after 9 years, real wages in New Zealand only increased 3%. Over 9 years, only 3%. So when people are coming to their offices and our offices and telling us they are struggling, they're quite right, because the cost of living, or the affordability of living, under that regime only increased 3% over 9 years, and the best economic opportunities and conditions this country has seen in many a generation, and they blew it. And it's almost criminal, Mr Chairman, of what they did. So when they have a go at us, trying to slow it down, trying to fix it up, and again, real wages increased under the National government thus far, 20-odd months in, 8.9%. 8.9% after only 2 years, Mr Chair. Mr Chairman, that is response to some of the somewhat half or silly allegations on the other side, Mr Chair. In fact, superannuitants, $120 better off a married couple in the 2 years or so of this government, because of changes to after-tax wages, because of an increase in average wages, and because of inflation, lower inflation and interest rates, Mr Chairman. Also, distribution, indexed. And changes will be indexed on October the 1st. At the same time GST changes, superannuitants will be paid up front. Normally it's a year later or 6 months later in that case. All distribution that can be indexed will be indexed. So again, if only the other side would finish the sentence and get off some high horse, because the contradiction is they say all this stuff and they're voting for the bill. They're actually voting for the bill. So perhaps a nice wee contribution to eliminating global warming will be some reduction in some of the speeches on the other side. I wait with bated breath, Mr Chairman. The other part, budget advice. A couple of speakers on the other side have just been talking about that. Very good point, and it's quite correct. Budget advisors around the country are having quite a few more people come through trying to balance their affairs. And again, as I spoke earlier, the affordability of living has Mr Chairman,
Thank you, Foster.
has improved somewhat over the last 2 years, but after 9 years of only 3% real wage growth, people are struggling. But when you go to a budget advisor, what do? They look at both sides of your ledger, what money coming in, money coming out, what can you not afford, what would you like to afford, what do you need, what are your basic necessities. So you can imagine Dr Cullen or Mr Cunliffe going along to the budget advisor. What would they say? Stop all these silly promises and commitments where you end up borrowing money. Manage the money coming in, but try and make it distribute your income a bit more, and don't be at the risk of recessions if you can. Try and grow the real part of your wages, Mr Chairman. And to spend the super savings from some somewhat economic illiterate person over there. Here's a point. New Zealand Super Fund manages about $15 billion. $16 billion. They manage that. They'll return about 4.25% this year. The Crown is borrowing about $15 billion at 6% this year to keep the lights on. No, the tax cuts are fiscally neutral, Mr Chairman. So again, if only, and I'm more than happy to lend some quite basic textbooks with nice diagrams, perhaps in comic formation for some of the other members opposite, so they may just understand what's going on. The real side of the New Zealand economy is having a boost. After the real side of the economy has been in recession for 5 years, no real growth, hardly any real growth in wages. Actually, the tax switching, some of the changes in this particular allegedly non-controversial bill are all part of setting that platform, Mr Chair. For example, the changes in the beta regime, the controlled foreign company, Kiwisaver transportability of the Aussie scheme to New Zealand, all good stuff in anticipation of New Zealanders coming home with the election of the national government in 2008, of course, and perhaps in 2011. We'll see how that goes, Mr Chair. One point, Mr Chair, I will acknowledge the FEC Select Committee. The process in and around this bill at Select Committee has been quite admirable. I do acknowledge that. And generally the consensus across the committee, we have made some changes to the bill that originally came into the House. I acknowledge them across party. I acknowledge officials. I acknowledge our independent advisers. And Mr Chairman, I look forward to this continued debate, perhaps somewhat more formed as we go through some of the clauses in the bill. Mr Chair, thank you.